Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Socially Distant Sports Talk with WCBN. I'm Charlie Goodwin. Hope everyone's staying safe out there. Today, we have a very special guest on the show. He is one of the most prominent figures in sports media today. His most notable work comes as an NFL insider, where he's often the first person to break NFL news as well as other various sports news. And of course, he is a University of Michigan alumni, so we're very excited to have him today, Adam Schefter. Adam, how are you doing?
Hello, Charlie. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
We're very excited to have you on the show. I mean, you're someone who I've watched almost my whole life. So this is just crazy to me that this is happening. So I want to start with something pretty relevant to news today, in that with no sports going on, other guests we've had on this show, their job relies on sports actually being played to do what they need to do. But for you, you've had other news to report on, whether it's the NFL draft or Tom Brady's free agency. So have you found that people are more focused on that off-season stuff because there's no sports, or less focused because of everything else going on in the world?
I don't know. I just know that people miss sports. I think it's fair to say that. And so they're looking for information they can get. I don't think that's anything unusual. I think that people are always looking for sports information. And because there's just nothing else going on, there seems to be, again, perhaps more attention on that. But I don't know if people are craving it more. I just think that we miss the way that life was. We miss what sports brought to our lives. And because of that, people are more aware of some things that are happening. There's more conversation about Tom Brady moving because, frankly, there's no conversation about any games being played.
Right. And then going off that a little bit, have you found that you've had to change the way you either receive stories or break them with what's going on right now?
No, the job has remained the same. It's still about getting information, processing information, putting out information. That really is no different. Again, there are no games. And so when we're doing Sports Center or NFL Live, they're probably going to gear it around your information as opposed to something that actually played out or happened. That doesn't happen right now. But no, that has not changed my job or the way I do my job.
Right. And I guess that's very fortunate for you because, like I said, other people that we've had on this show, such as Colin Cosell, he's a PA announcer. So he's had to find something totally new to do during this time, but you've been able to stick to your guns, which is very nice. I would assume.
Well, it's the job.
Yeah,
Just doing the job.
Exactly. So I want to talk a little more about changes in your job, not really specifically right now, but more over the years. You're someone who's been in this business for a long time, getting your start back when newspapers and print media were still a big way to get news. Not to make you sound dated, but
no, but I am. I'm old.
But I was just wondering how, over the years, you've changed your approach with technology, especially being that Twitter is probably your biggest outlet for how you get news out.
Well, right now I'm on, and so which I've never done before. I'm trying to open my little cold brew here, which I can't get open. So I'm going to put down the phone 1 second, if you'll allow me to do this.
Of course.
Don't mind. Of course. Okay, there we go. Okay, now we got that going. Okay. So now I will pick up the phone. The job just has become relentless. But that's fine because you know what? Every job is relentless. I think if anybody's conscientious in any line of work, whether it's in finance or medicine or in education or whatever it may be, does the job ever go away? I don't know that it does. It doesn't for me. The news doesn't stop. It's more constant. Back in the days when I worked for the Michigan Daily or Rocky Mountain News, the Denver Post for a newspaper, it was a slower news cycle. It was just different. And now, yes, you're right. We could be on this call right now and somebody could get traded. Somebody could get cut. Somebody could get in trouble. Somebody could be signing a contract extension. You just don't know what's going to happen at any point of any day. And so that has changed, and it's your responsibility to be responsible for whatever happens at all times, whenever it does. So that's why when we're in the middle of June and it's quiet time, these are usually nice days.
Right. I actually, when I heard you speak at Michigan, I remember you telling a story. You were at maybe your mother-in-law's birthday dinner and you got the news of Andrew Luck retiring, and it was something that you really knew you couldn't leave, but you also had to leave because it was a big story like that. So I imagine you've had many moments like that over your career.
Well, that was my mother-in-law's 75th surprise birthday dinner. And we had just walked in. She just walked in. She was surprised. We literally sat down at the table, and I got a text about it. And so I felt terrible that my night was compromised. But again, that's just an example of the job. Like, what am I going to do? I didn't plan it that way. It was a Saturday night in August. I'll never forget it. I was in a town in New York, Piermont, New York, that I'd never been to, in a nice little Italian restaurant. I was out on the street. People were coming up and asking if it was true that Andrew Luck was retired. It was a very surreal scene. But again, that's the nature of the job.
Going off of that point, over the years, you've broken so many stories and interviewed so many people for NFL Live or Sports Center. Is there a favorite memory from your career that sticks out to you? I know it might be hard to pick just one, but
Yeah, I wouldn't do that, Charlie. I would just say that, again, I've done this now for 30 years, and I feel very fortunate and privileged to have been able to do it that long and to work at a great place like ESPN with great producers and behind the scenes people. All the people have been great teammates. I really couldn't say to you, oh boy, this moment was
right.
Yeah, again, you work for a great company, covering the most popular sport in the country. The whole thing, the whole experience has been very memorable, to be perfectly frank.
I mean, I guess that's all you could really ask for. Just to appreciate the entirety of your job is something incredible that I'm not sure many people get to say, and
Yeah.
you do. So that's pretty amazing. I mean,
Well, I never would have thought it would have happened the way it did when I was back at the Michigan Daily in Ann Arbor. If you had said to me, this should be your career, you spend 30 years covering the NFL, you cover it for newspapers for half the time, TV half the time, you'll get to do what you do, be involved in the stories you're involved with, get to know the people you do. I would have said, sign me up. How much do I have to pay you to do that job?
right.
That's how I would have felt back in the day. So like I said, it's been a tremendous journey, and I feel privileged to be able to do the job that I do.
Yeah, that's very nice that you get the opportunity to say that. Like I said before, something I'm curious about personally is in your career as a journalist at the Michigan Daily or as a beat writer for the Denver Broncos, and then as an insider, would you ever get those like butterflies before you interview a certain person, or do you still even get them today? Because I know me sitting here right now interviewing you, I got those definitely before you joined the call, and I just wonder if that ever goes away.
uh, I don't know. You feel a little bit of adrenaline to this day. There are certain people I get anxious. I do a podcast every week called the Adam Schefter
Right.
podcast, and I don't care whether it's a big name guest or a small name guest. Until we get them on the line and it's going, I'm just anxious to get it going. Like
Right.
I'm taping a podcast this afternoon, and again, I just want to make sure that they call in the right number. My producer can hear me. I can hear them. They can hear the guest. The guest remembers to call it. Like just a lot that I just want to go right. Nerves of the guest, nerves about talking to a guest. Not so much anymore. I think back in the day, probably, definitely. Like I've done enough interviews over time where I got nervous. Your heart's pitter pattering.
Right.
You feel the adrenaline. I don't think that's unnatural at all. I think that's pretty common. I think the older you get, the more that feeling subsides. I don't think it ever completely goes away. But again, my concerns now are more from a technical standpoint, making sure that everything's all lined up and working the way it should be.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely get that because actually when you emailed me if you could hop on the call just now, for some reason my Zoom wouldn't open, and I was like, okay, can't mess this up. We got to get it open. So I'm not going to have many chances to do this in my life with Adam Schefter. So that gave me a little bit.
You never know. You never know, Charlie.
Yeah. Actually, back to a quick relationship that I actually had with you a few months ago when I emailed you a previous interview I'd done, and I was not only shocked that you answered almost immediately, but you also gave me tips that I've tried to follow in each interview since, and even in this interview right now. Do you often get people or young people trying to reach out to you with advice, or is there anyone that you have sort of mentored in the industry today?
Uh, you know, it's been amazing during this pandemic. I don't know what it is. I feel like almost the floodgates have opened, and I would say that very rarely does a day pass where there's not a request from somebody about something. Like, it's unbelievable. I've tried to oblige as much as I can, and I don't even go on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter and look at that. I just don't look at messages
Right.
uh, in those areas, because you could spend all day doing that. So
Hmm.
I know there are people that have messaged me in that form, and I apologize if I haven't gotten to them, but I just don't do that. There have been people that have reached me other ways, emails, through a friend, um, send me a letter at ESPN, whatever it may be. I don't know. Or they call ESPN, which is really, frankly, the best way to do it. Like, to go through ESPN and the communications department there, because they that's their job.
Right.
Um, but it just seems like the last few months, I've gotten a request from somebody about something on an almost daily basis, and I've tried to do as much as I can. I'm usually not a no guy if I see the request. But again, this is a quieter time of year. I try to make it such. I got my daughter outside. My in-laws just got over. I'm going to go join them here pretty soon. But like I said, I try to carve out a little bit of time here to make sure that I try to get back to people that are caring enough to reach out.
Right. I mean, I think it's great that you're so open to helping those that ask for it. If you like, you get to it, if you said, and then you touched on your family there for a second, and I
Yeah, but
personally,
before you get to that, I could answer a question for a lot of people, because a lot of people, oh, what advice do you have? And I think the best way of saying it is, if you just Google. I gave a speech at Northwestern in 2014, talking to the graduate school about career advice. And if you just Google Adam Schefter Northwestern speech and watch it, it's like 75 minutes of just advice that I would give to anybody entering the working world. Now, it's a little different world today than
right.
it was 6 years ago, technologically, fundamentally, philosophically, but still, it the still basic guiding principles still apply. So for all those people who are out there who would like to ask for career advice, I would say to you, Charlie, I would say to anybody that is watching today, go on to Google, click on Adam Schefter Northwestern speech 2004, and just watch it and see if you get anything from it.
Right. I will definitely do that. But one thing that I remember specifically that you said when I heard you speak at Michigan was that your piece of advice, your single piece of advice for any young person would be to read.
Yeah.
Read as much as they could. That was actually one of my questions, but we got to it anyway. To just read anything they could.
Yep.
So I personally actually just finished your book, The Man I Never Met. I read it about 2 weeks ago. I finished it in a day. I loved it. Incredible story. And I was just curious, not what went into writing the story, but how did you come up with the idea that you wanted to put that into words and then go through with actually compiling everything that went into the book?
Well, what happened was, obviously, I married a woman who lost her husband on 9/11, and many lives were changed that day, not just hers. But again, I'm married to this woman, so I lived that firsthand. And around the 10th anniversary of 9/11, I pitched ESPN. I'm like, hey, my wife came to me. She's like, you never talk about um, my late husband, Joe Mayo. And I'm like, well, you're a very private person. I didn't know that you wanted me to talk about Joe. And she said, well, you could acknowledge it, and it would be nice if you, paid respect to. I said, I have no problem doing that. None, but I just was trying to be respectful of my wife.
Right.
And so I don't know what it was. I tweeted out a couple of things about him maybe, and I went to ESPN and I said, hey, it's 10th anniversary 9/11. Any interest in doing a feature of my wife's late husband or how it's impacted our life? And I really didn't know what we were going to do with the story, but I just pitched it, and and they said, well, think about it. And they decided not to do it. And then oddly enough, and I don't even know where it came from, but 5 years later, for the 15th anniversary of 9/11, one of the producers at ESPN, a friend of mine, great guy by the name of Greg Jewell, came to me and he said, hey, I think we're going to do that piece on Joe. And I was like, wow. He said, yeah, for the 15th anniversary of 9/11, it'll be the opening Sunday of the NFL season, September 11th, 2016, it would have been. And so that's what we did. And honestly, I didn't even know what form it would take or how it would go. But they sent out a great producer, Dominique Collins, and she came out here and did a tremendous job and helped put together the story. And I wrote the script for it. I wrote the script on a flight to Denver, just some thoughts I had about Joe, about how he had shaped my life, even though I never met him. And the piece ran that day, and the reaction that it generated was unbelievable. Like, I got done and there were literally hundreds of texts and emails waiting for me when the piece ended. It was like, it really touched it, the piece, for whatever reason, resonated with a lot of people. And if they want to see that, they could just Google, Adam Schefter 9/11 video, and they could watch it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was, it generated so much reaction that there were some people that came to me and said, hey, we'd like to turn it into a book. And I really didn't even know what form the book would take, but I'm like, okay, well, let me speak to my wife first. And she wasn't sure. So we kind of did it very hesitantly. It wasn't like, oh yeah, book, let's go do this.
Right.
And so we started writing a book, and I enlisted the help of former Michigan Daily writer Michael Rosenberg, who's a tremendous writer, great guy, perfect disposition to work with me. And he helped put the whole thing together. And it helped that I've kept a journal every day of my life since 1990. I've every day documented notes about every day. And so I was able to just basically hand him the journal, whatever he wanted, and he could go back and, put together the pieces of the puzzle, so to speak.
I mean, the book, not to just keep putting praise out there, but the book just came out incredible. I absolutely love the story. For all those listening, it's called The Man I Never Met. If you didn't catch the name back there, I really recommend it. Definitely the fastest book I've finished ever, and I'm also not much of a reader. So,
thank you.
And then I want to end just with a couple just fun little questions, especially for would be doing the interview a disservice. I didn't ask these to a Michigan man. So one restaurant in Ann Arbor, where are you eating?
Well, I love Zingerman's. I mean,
right.
I know it's cliche, but that's where we seem to go. Love it there. The food is definitely upgraded since I was there. A lot of good restaurants that have been added on the scene. That Mexican restaurant, Isalita, is very good, right?
That's so good, yeah. That's where we go for like parents' weekend.
Yeah, and the Italian restaurant next door.
Mani.
Mani.
Yeah, that's also good.
Those are two really good places. So recommend those places. Zingerman's great. Like that French toast at Angelo's. I'm like everybody else who comes back to Michigan, right?
Yeah, I mean, my mom went there as well, class of 1992, and everyone who sees her says it's like a cult, which I think a lot of people would agree with. And then is there a favorite Ann Arbor memory that sticks out to you?
Well, it's a little bit like the career. Like, how about just the whole thing? I mean,
right. Yeah.
It all stands out. I know that in our senior year, Michigan won the Rose Bowl in January, beat USC, and then won the national championship in basketball in April. And, my friends and I went to the Sweet 16. We were in Lexington, Kentucky for that, to watch Michigan beat North Carolina and Virginia to get to the Final Four. And then we went to the Final Four in Seattle. Me and my friends, we bought tickets from the athletic department, bought extra tickets. We sold the tickets to finance the trip. Me and my college roommates went out to Seattle, had about as much fun as you could humanly have in one weekend, watch our school, win the national championship in basketball. And then we wound up graduating, about 3 weeks later. So, I mean, that was really the ultimate send-off party. You could never ask for anything more than that ever. So that always will stand out in my mind.
And that's actually when you decided to start keeping a journal, if I remember correctly, right?
Oh, it was about the time. Yeah, I got tired of not remembering exactly what we did all weekend in Seattle. I could remember a lot of that weekend still.
Right. I mean, that's something I'd like to maybe start to do at some point in my life. I just have
Don't
not
wait.
gotten around with it.
Start
Right.
now.
It's an
Yeah.
easy thing to do. It's just something that I haven't gotten started on. And then last thing, as a Jets fan, I need to know how do you feel about this season?
The Jets would be better than people think. How about that, Charlie?
That's all I can ask for with all these 3-13 seasons I've seen in my life.
They'll be better than
So,
people realize.
once again, thank you for this opportunity and being on the show. This was amazing. If there's any last thing you'd like to say, just put it out there right now.
Well, again, like I said, watch that video. I told you, I would tell others, read 30 minutes a day. You can do anything you want to do. Don't let anybody dissuade you. And every time somebody tells you no, all that means is there's another opportunity waiting for you with somebody else, probably better than you even realized. So no's are invitations to do other things, and you should welcome those invitations because sometimes you never know where they lead.
And with that, this has been another episode of Socially Distant Sports Talk. For Adam Schefter, I'm Charlie Goodwin. Good night, and go blue.